Good evening. This is the Northern Sun Experience, joined once again by former Augustana point guard Jordan Dalton to break down NSIC basketball. Jordan, we're going to start on the men's side. Concordia St. Paul, easily their best weekend of the entire season. They go to overtime against number 3 MSU Moorhead, get a double OT victory. Then they get another big win over Northern State. Golden Bears are just 5-11 in the conference. They're sort of in that lower tiered pack. But do those kinds of wins maybe help them be a spoiler come tournament time? I
think it's great. We talked about it all year long, how momentum plays such a huge role, especially during the tournament. And so for the Golden Bears, like you said, they've had a rocky start to the season. But at this point, they understand the only way they make the regional tournament is to win the NSIC tournament. And so 2 wins like this can absolutely propel them as far as momentum and confidence going into the NSIC tournament to say, hey, maybe we can win this thing. Because not only did they compete with 2 of the best teams in the conference, they were able to beat the 2 of the best teams in the conference. And so that just does a huge amount for a team's confidence. I really think in the next 2 weeks it'll determine if they're kind of on a roll here or if that was a fluke, because they got 4 games on the road here. They got the longest road trip of the year coming up this upcoming weekend in North Dakota. So we'll be able to see if the Golden Bears can kind of use this as a launching pad or not. So I'm really excited for them, though. Great weekend, and hopefully they can build off of it.
You mentioned the road trip. They've won 5 of their past 6 games at home, so as you said, they're going to have to prove it on the road if they're for real. Well, on the opposite side of that, Minnesota State Moorhead loses that double overtime game, but then they come back on Saturday, win another overtime game at Minnesota State. 2 OT games, 3 total overtimes, 2 different results. How should the Dragons view this weekend?
Yeah, I think they should view it as a split on the road. You know what I mean? We talk about it all year long, how it's very difficult in this league to go on the road, win back-to-back games. I don't care who you're playing. You know, that's a tall task for any team in the conference. So I think what they should view it as, though, is great experience. You know, as we get later into the season, you see teams second, maybe even a third time when you're playing them, they start to understand tendencies, and you're inevitably going to have those closer games. And so there's no replacement to have that type of experience that they had this past weekend. You know, there's no drills, there's no amount of drills, there's nothing you do in practice to simulate, hey, how can we execute when the game is on the line? And so for the Dragons, I think it's all on the defensive end. You know, traditionally they've been a top 5 defense in the conference, only allowing 73 points a game and holding opponents to under 42% from the field. And this weekend they gave up 97 points to the Golden Bears and then 89 points to Minnesota State Mankato, excuse me. So if they're going to get back to their championship aspirations, championship ways, they're going to have to lock down on the defensive end.
Yeah, Isaac Seavley still doing well on the offensive and defensive end for Moorhead, but again, only 2 conference losses, but they're by a combined 5 points. Minnesota State, meanwhile, lost to Moorhead in overtime Saturday, beat Northern State in double OT on Friday. So similar to the Dragons, Mavericks also had 2 overtime games this weekend. How should Minnesota State view that?
Absolutely. I think this weekend this entire year has really been a learning process for the Mavericks because of how many new players they have. They have 5 transfers on the roster, and a lot of those guys play pretty big, prominent roles on their team. And so the weekend like they had this weekend, it gives them a chance to kind of bond together and build and continue to develop that trust in one another. And so I think, like I said, they're a very talented team. They do a great job of playing kind of a 5-out dribble motion type of offense, which is phenomenal on the defensive end because they have so many guys that can make plays off the bounce. It's going to be on the defensive end where I want to see if they're able to kind of combat some of that lack of size that they have on the interior, because we have some great post players in the NSIC. And so sometimes when the Mavericks go 5-out, you know, with all 5 guards, they have a little bit difficult time of defending in the post. And so I really think if they're going to make that push and kind of get to that upper echelon and have a chance at winning the NSIC tournament, they're going to have to figure out a way to defend the post a little bit better than they have in the past.
Well, they've certainly got some experience. They've had 3 overtime games already this year. They had 3 in the previous 3 seasons combined. Well, Sioux Falls is a team that's on the rise. They swept this weekend. Big 22-point win at Minnesota Duluth. Cougars now have 8 conference wins this season. They had 8 wins total all of last year. Why have they improved so much?
Absolutely, and it's undeniably on the defensive end. They're a great defensive team. They do a great job of just wreaking havoc on the defensive end. They're holding opponents to under 72 points per game and averaging over 6 steals a game, excuse me. And so what they do is they change up the pace of the game. So as an offense, you can never really get into a solid rhythm. And so sometimes the Cougars will go zone, sometimes they'll go man, sometimes they'll pick up full court, sometimes they'll go to a kind kind of half-court trap. And so you never really see the same defense 2 times in a row. And as an offense, that's very, very difficult to generate any type of rhythm and momentum. So I think if the Cougars are going to make some noise in the tournament, they have to rely on their defense and continue to play with the same type of energy and effort as they have.
You mentioned their defense. Their past 3 wins, the offense has scored at least 95 points. Augustana, meanwhile, your alma mater, usually the lead story. They're the #1 team in the country, but at this point, their winnings become more or less routine. They got 2 more wins this weekend. Tough one against UMary, though, but then they pretty much blew out Minot State on Sunday. Are they ready for that Moorhead showdown coming up this Saturday?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've kind of done what we talked about. It's been a process, and they've been getting better and better each and every week. You know, they've had some close games, which I think is great for them as far as that experience goes. But they're so tough on the three-point line. You know, they're the best three-point shooting team in the conference, shooting at over 43% a game and making over 10 threes a game. And so what that does is it creates isolations on the post. So you got, you know, arguably one of the best players in Division II basketball, and Dan Jansen and Casey Schilling, who are great down low on the block. And teams can't double team them because there's 4 guys around the perimeter who can knock down three-pointers at a high rate and a consistent rate. I believe this weekend, Sunday against Minot, they had 8 players make a three-pointer. And so it's kind of like pick your poison with them. And so I think it's going to be a great, great weekend for them. But right now, they just seem so talented and have so many weapons on the offensive end that it's going to be very, very difficult to shut off all those weapons at one point in time.
Of course, they got a tough game Friday against Northern State, but the big showdown, probably the game of the year Saturday, Augustana at Minnesota State Moorhead. Well, when we come back, Jordan's going to break down the previous weekend in NSIC women's hoops.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Here once again with Jordan Dalton to talk about women's hoops. Jordan, Northern State topped Minnesota State on Friday, but then they gave up a season-high 83 points in a loss at Concordia St. Paul Saturday. How can the Wolves be a little more consistent down the stretch?
Yeah, we've talked about it all year long, how they want to control pace, but in the last couple of weeks, they've been playing in the 70s and have had some success, you know, playing that high pace, a little bit more possession type game. I really think Saturday night, they just shot themselves in the foot from the free throw line. They went 10 of 25 in the second half from the free throw line. And if you're going to get wins consistently, you can't do that. And I also think they only shot the ball 35% on Saturday as well. So when teams speed them up, they have a tendency to rush their shots, maybe take the first look versus the best look they have on the offensive end. So I think if they want to be a little bit more consistent, they have to show a little bit more discretion on the offensive end and really pass up those good shots and look for a great shot because that's what they did in the earlier part of the season and had so much success with. I really think that's what they need to do to get back to their winning ways.
You mentioned their offense. Defensively, they've given up at least 69 points in all their losses this season. In their other wins, they're giving up an average of just 56, so a big disparity there. So while the Wolves lead the North Division, Winona State continues to lead the South Division. 2 more wins this weekend. Big 24-point win at Minnesota Crookston. Why are the Warriors so efficient offensively?
Yeah, I think they're the most balanced team in the league as far as playing hard on the offensive end and defensive end. It's a great team to watch on the offensive end because they pass and share the ball so well. Both games this weekend had over 15 assists and assisted on almost 50% or more of all their made baskets. And so they're a great job. They do a great job of really sharing the basketball. We talk about chemistry being such an important role, and I think they're playing one of the best team basketball in the conference right now. That and then the effort they have on the defensive end. Best defense in the conference, only giving up 54 points a game. And so I think, like I said, they're the most balanced team in the fact that they play with a lot of energy and a lot of effort on the defensive end, and a lot of times that fuels them sharing the basketball and playing so efficiently on the offensive end.
You mentioned that Winona State first in defense, they're second in offense. Their margin of victory is an average of at least 20 points a game, best in the conference. Well, Sioux Falls has won 6 of its last 8 games. Both of those losses were by 1 point each. USF has improved its record every season since 2012 when they joined the conference. How does Travis Trapphagen get the most out of his girls?
Yeah, well, I think Coach Trapp, what he does is he lets his players play with a phenomenal amount of freedom and instills a ton of confidence in them. When you see them play on both ends of the court, nobody's afraid to make a big play because nobody's afraid to make a big mistake as well. Coach Trapp understands that you're going to have some ups and downs, some ebbs and flows, you know, as the season goes on. But if you instill that amount of confidence in his players, that freedom that he allows them to play with, that's really what fuels that team. And they're led by obviously a phenomenal backcourt. with Maddie Robeson as one of the best decision makers in the conference, averaging over 4.5 assists per game. And so she does a great job of really orchestrating that offense and getting her teammates in positions where they're going to be successful. And then what can you say about Taylor Varsho? You know, no moment's too big for her. She plays with an extreme amount of confidence and just exudes a lot of energy that really feeds off to the rest of her team. One of the best three-point shooters in the country, you know, making over three-pointers a game. And so I think when you have those two in the backcourt, it's very, very difficult, or very easy, to play with or give them a lot of freedom and the confidence that they see night in and night out.
You see the growth of Travis Traphagen's team since they joined the conference in 2012. They've gone from 12 wins to 14 wins to 17 wins, and then this season they already have 18 wins with still a month to go in the season. Jordan Dalton, thank you very much for joining us once again. Looking forward to the home stretch.
Absolutely, can't wait.
All right, thanks, Jordan. Well, when we come back, we're going to stick with basketball, but not exactly in the traditional sense. The inspiring story of Southwest Minnesota State's Derek Klinkner is next.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
And welcome back to the Northern Sun Experience. Derek Klinkner was a multi-sport athlete at Southwest Minnesota State, but being involved in more than one sport was not out of choice, but necessity. And now he's using his circumstances to lift the Mustangs up while keeping them grounded.
Hey, we're ready. You guys can bring it.
The fast lane at Southwest Minnesota State's wheelchair basketball camp runs 94 feet.
Nothing here. Nothing here. Woo! Hey, Sam, how you doing? Hey, watch baseline. Go baseline. Go baseline. Go baseline.
But Derek Klinkner has always been quick. With a shot.
There you go. That's your shot, Brian. I bet you're not going to make it, though. I'm talking trash here right now. Woohoo! Called it.
And his mouth.
Some people think, you know, they're in wheelchairs, it's not that intense of a sport. I'll say, come on, I'll play a one-on-one. I'll spot you 20 points a game at 21 and give you the ball first. We'll see who wins.
A quick talker, a quick learner, and quickly understanding that life has a funny way of giving you everything you ever wanted.
Woo! I'll take that. I'll take that.
Derek Klinkner grew up in Artesian, South Dakota, working on the family farm and eventually earning a football scholarship to SMSU.
You come on campus and you get a feel of a big old family. That's kind of how I describe it. We're just kind of a big old family here at Southwest. And that's one thing that I was looking for. I come from a small town, close to my family. I wanted to essentially feel part of a family choosing a school.
In his first 2 seasons as a Mustang, Derek racked up more than 130 tackles and earned NSIC All-Conference honors. It was hard work that earned Derek those accolades. But after his sophomore season, even harder work laid ahead. On a rainy day in the spring of 2010, Derek was helping his dad move a water tank across the farm.
Actually, we use a payloader tire, put it on its side, put cement in the bottom of it, so essentially it's really heavy. It's about 3,000 pounds, this particular tire. We were moving it from point A to point B, and when we placed it at point B, the ground wasn't quite level, so we put some backfill in there to make it level. While we were picking it up and hooking up the pipes underneath of it, because that's the came through the center, the earth on the opposite side, so the backfill that I just laid down gave away and shifted out of the bucket on top of me. Essentially breaking my back, or for the science nerds, I'm a T12 L1 dislocation. It was a very sharp, excruciating pain. I would describe it as, you know, taking like a butcher knife, you know, about 12 inches, 18 inches, and jabbing in your back. So it was like that. Every time you're taking a breath, you turn that knife a quarter of a turn.
Derek was paralyzed from the waist down. His football career was over.
But then it wasn't until about 6 weeks later that it really hit me, that I'm like, oh crap, I'm gonna be in a wheelchair for the rest of my life, you know, and this sucks, you know, and it really took a toll on me, and it was tough because, you know, I loved football. Football essentially was my life, and that got taken away from me. Like, what am I going to do now?
Despite the accident, Derek returned to SMSU for his junior year and found a new outlet for his athleticism, although he wasn't exactly quick to come around to it.
I'm never going to play that terrible sport. Those are my exact words. I'm never going to play that terrible sport.
So how exactly did the wheels get started? Well, Derek actually lost a bet to a friend, and he was forced to try out for the wheelchair basketball team.
And that first day, I literally had open wounds on my hand. They were bleeding. Everything I touched, I'd leave blood. And I couldn't move. They wouldn't let me go to play defense, wouldn't let me go down on offense. It was really frustrating. I was just like, how can I can't? I'm stuck there. I'm like, oh, and then I turn around and the same person's on the opposite side, not letting me move. And it was a shell shock, because, you know, like I said, I was so naturally, you know, gifted at everything that I did, and it's something that I sucked at. and essentially that drove me to get better.
You're going to shoot this one. Let's look it up.
Derek did get better, earning his way onto the team in the fall of 2010 and eventually onto the coaching staff. In fact, Derek was both a player and coach from 2012 to 2014, maintaining the head coaching job after earning both his bachelor's and master's degrees.
He's a really good guy. He expects a lot out of his players and just is really hard and kind of pushes us towards where we need to go.
This program's only going to grow as much as Derek grows, because Derek's going to really have to push things. But if you talk to him for 5 minutes, he's very confident.
Nice shot last time. Go make it next time, I promise.
Along with the help of SMSU alum Ryan Martin, Derek's using this camp to help kids from all across the country understand what his players already know. The chair isn't an excuse, it's an opportunity.
Everywhere else is going to baby you. We're going to tell you how it is, and we're going to tell it to you straight.
You have the ability to be highly competitive. You bring him here on campus, we pre-test and post-test him, and essentially between that time we train him.
He does things the right way. He's really focusing on these athletes getting their degree, because there is no MBA.
I'll make this one, I hope. It's embarrassing if I miss it. And I missed.
The pace of Derek's life never slowed down, and more importantly for him, his body, mind, and spirit never did either. From starting linebacker to player coach of a wheelchair basketball team, Derek hasn't really had the time to learn a different speed. But what he has learned is that life after tragedy is something he'll always cherish, no matter how quickly it goes.
I don't know what I'd be doing. It's crazy because if you think about it, because of my accident, I got a bachelor's, a master's degree, and a job. So if I didn't have my accident, where would I be in life? I don't know. If I didn't have wheelchair basketball, where would I be in life? Probably twiddling my thumbs playing video games. It's more than just basketball, it's more or less life lessons, so you essentially whatever you learn on the court you can apply to your real life. Like you have an obstacle, how do you overcome that obstacle on the court? Well, then you can do the same thing in life.
Coming up next, wrestling highlights from around the NSIC, including Minnesota State's impressive stretch that has them climbing up the wrestling polls.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back. Minnesota State Wrestling came into this past weekend undefeated in conference duels, but they were facing a daunting three-day stretch, facing two nationally ranked teams in a row. We'll start on Thursday, where they hosted Augustana at the Taylor Center. Started at 133 pounds, the Mavericks' Paul Selman goes for the right leg and gets 2 points on the takedown of Morgan Engbrecht. He would eventually win by an 11-7 decision. Augie and Minnesota State would keep things neck and neck for a while, but at 174 pounds, the Mavericks wrestle momentum away. In overtime, number 8, Adam Coolin gets a sudden takedown of Tim Weber near the edge. That gave Coolin a 3-1 victory in the match, and Minnesota State would eventually take the duel 19-16. The Mavs would face a much more difficult test at Upper Iowa Saturday. At 125, the Peacocks' Malik Williams gains the upper hand on Trevor Schultz for 2 points and an eventual 8-5 decision. At 149, Damian Penachet goes low and eventually gets Diane Herman on the ground for 2. Last match is the heavyweights. Minnesota State needs a pin for the win, and while Malcolm Allen does get a tech fall, he cannot put Avery Jacobs down, and Upper Iowa survives a tight one, 18-17. Meanwhile, St. Cloud State, the number 2 team in the nation, taking on UMary Saturday. 157 pounds, Travis Holt gets the quick pin on Dane Fisher, finishing the match in less than a minute. And then at 197, VJ Julio gets another pin for St. Cloud State on Tom DeVito. The Huskies had 4 pins in the match, and they take home this duel 42-3. When we come back, it's DB's Picks, my top 5 plays of the past week in the NSIC.
The Northern Sun Experience on Midco Sports Network is presented by Sanford Orthopedics and Sports Medicine and Dakota Land Honda.
Welcome back. It's time for DB's Picks, my top 5 plays of the past week in the NSIC. At number 5, we go with a player who wears 5. Augustana's Sophie Kenny drives inside and throws up a no-look reverse layup over Minot State. Check it out again. The senior known for her assists can credit the glass for help with this bucket at play number 5. For number 4, we measure the Richter scale. Augustana's Alex Richter gets behind the UMary defense and throws it down with 2 hands. Take another look. Jordan Spencer draws the eyes of the Marauder defense and finds a streaking Richter who hammers it home. That provided a backbreaker in the Vikings' close win and also provides them with play number 4 of the past week. For number 3, Minnesota Duluth's Brendan Pineda is clear for liftoff, throwing down this alley-oop from Pierre Newton. All eyes once again are on the ball, and no one from SMSU notices Pineda gliding toward the hoop. The Bulldogs show their bark and their bite at number 3. For number 2, 2 great plays from Concordia's Brendan Matthews. First, he gets the breakaway jam off the steal against MSU Moorhead, and then on the very next Dragon possession, Matthews takes it away himself, dives on the floor and saves it as Mike Yonke goes in for the slam of his own. The freshman from Eagan, Minnesota coming up big in more ways than one, checking in at number 2. But our number 1 play comes from another Concordia St. Paul freshman in the same game. Down by 1 with just seconds remaining in overtime, Stephen Craigt hits the game-winning layup against MSU Moorhead, taking down the number 3 team in the country. Here it is one more time. Osio Moreggi charges down the right side and feeds it underneath to Craigt for the left-handed lay-in. Those were Craig's first and only 2 points of the ball game, but it gave his team a 1-point win and the number 1 play of the past week. Once again, a thank you to all of our NSIC member schools for their time, video, and contributions for this week's show. We'll be back right here next week for another Northern Sun Experience.